job, team. Oh, it's not over. Wait, is it? I guess it is kind of over. Okay, well, I have this list of general points I'll go over. I won't go into detail of everything. I'll just tell you what I thought. So first of all, story. I think overall the story was... It was above average for a JRPG, I'd say. You wouldn't know, Dean, because you just showed up for the very end. But I'd say it was good. There were some cool moments. Cutscenes, I'm just gonna go down my list. Cutscenes were really great. I think all the cutscenes were pretty good in this game. Sometimes I felt like the in-game cutscenes were better than the rendered ones, but they were all pretty solid. The plot is above average, I'd say. The setting is really cool. Cool sci-fi setting. Well, I don't know. I say that it was pretty basic sci-fi setting, to be real. They didn't do nearly as much with the space pirate concept as I hoped they would. And, you know, there's some confusing things about Eden and Mari Glen and time travel and shit. I think where the story really shines is in the characters. Like, the characters and their dialogue and the voice acting. I think all of that was really good. I think these characters are very endearing. They have some depth, except maybe for Jupus. I'm talking about, like, the party. They have pretty good chemistry with each other. They all have something to do in the plot, at least at some point, like for a chapter. Yeah. Characters were really great. I like them a lot. The main character was, you know, the main character was Jaster. And he's kind of like a generic anime JRPG boy. But he's got some more levels going on. You know, he's got an interesting past. I like his design. Good stuff. Aesthetics were great for this game. They still hold up. Nicely stylized. The music is good in this game. There's some great music. Nothing that I can, like, hum to you off the top of my head. But, I mean, the main theme that's playing right now is really solid. But all of it was very thematically appropriate. It was all good in the moment, which is all you can really ask for. Sound effects are good. Nothing, you know, stood out to me. UI, I think, is good. For everything it has to convey. The environments, there are some parts of this game that just look like I had to stop and pause and pan around, like, oh my gosh, this game looks gorgeous, you know? And in, like, the field areas, the environment art was really nice. There was a decent level of detail. A lot of it was like hallways, so you can't really do much with just corridors, but they made it work. They didn't have very many, like, interesting places to go. The most interesting locale, I think, was there was a mining planet where it was like night and it was like a city, and you know, it had like a lot of dark blues and teals, and you went to the mine and the city alleys and stuff. That was a pretty varied planet. I like that one a lot.
You look kind of cheesed off.
They're interrupting my review.
Important to us. We're gonna get it back.
Bro, they're gonna kidnap Kasala.
Got it.
Bro, what? Guys, no, don't do that. I think that's what they meant. They kidnapped Kasala and then held her for ransom. Okay, gameplay. This is the meat and potatoes, right? Gameplay. I have here exploration. So like moving around in the field before you get into combat, there's not much to it. You walk, you jump, there's a lot of invisible walls, and you're mostly running down hallways. So like in terms of exploration, there's not really to explore. So in that sense, it's like, yeah, there's not like, again, it's like all corridors. Every map is just like a web, like a grid of corridors, basically. Like, that's what it boils down to. So, it's not really, like, all that fun to explore in and of itself. And you know what? Like, you don't even really get that much reward for exploring. You get some chests every now and then. But sometimes they're mimics, and that sucks. And the rewards in the chests aren't really all that mind-blowing most of the time. Sometimes you get an outfit or like a weapon, but it's alright. So I'd say exploration is a little lacking. It gets the job done. Combat's the real meat and potatoes, right? Exploration's only a means to an end to get to combat. I think the combat's really good. I love an action RPG. It's got action. You know, you can attack, you can use your sub weapon, you can block, you can jump, you can you didn't see this very much, Dean, actually, but there's an option where you can grab. You can grab and throw enemies at other enemies, and they bump into each other, and they deal damage. That's really fun. There's the option to use, like, the monography shot, or the free shot, or whatever. The barrier shot. Those are kind of annoying, but, you know, they add some depth, I guess. I think the action point system is the only thing that keeps it from being ridiculous, because otherwise you could just spam attacks and win, and just spam all your abilities with reckless abandon. But most of your abilities drain your action gauge completely, and you have to wait for it to fill up. But there's also counterplay, because if you block an attack, it refills your action gauge, and then you can attack again. So you're rewarded for, you know, blocking and defending yourself, and sort of switching between aggression and attacking and stuff like that. Risk reward, you know. I never felt like I was at risk of losing all of my health potions. I had a lot of health potions left over at the end of the game. I was never, ever, ever at risk of being out of, like, action points, which are the things you use to make abilities, or I'm sorry, it's 11 o'clock, it's 11:30, that you use to cast abilities. Like, you can just spam your abilities and then just chug one recharge drink and you have all of it back. Like, it's kind of ridiculous that it didn't restore like 50% or something like the health potions did. But overall, I think it was pretty good. Movement actually mattered. Like, you could run away from enemies and, you know, avoid attack. You could strafe around them. And you actually had the option to run away from every non-boss, non-mimic encounter in the game. There's never a risk of failing to flee. You can run away from anything you want, which means you can skip most of the game if you want, I guess, but you lose out on XP, and that's it. And drops, I guess. XP and drops, which you kind of need. But overall, I think the combat is fun. It's fast most of the time. It's dynamic enough to stay interesting. Enemy variety is a little lacking. A lot of the time, it sort of devolves into reskins of the same archetypes across planets. But there is a considerable amount of strategy to combat. You can't just charge in with your attacks willy-nilly. You have to actually think about what items you're using and what abilities you're using. Were the other bosses good? The other bosses were either... There were three kinds of bosses in this game. There's a regular boss, which I'll get to. There's the solo bosses, which I think I've talked about, and there's the gimmick bosses, right? So the gimmick bosses are the ones where you have to platform around with the monography shot, and those are like really lame because you're not even really fighting the boss at that point. And they still hit you really hard while you're trying to platform. There's like 2 of them in the game though, so I mean, not that bad. They don't make up much of the boss pool. The solo fights, oh my gosh, the solo fights are all slogs, every one of them. There's a few times in the game where the game takes away your party members. You have to fight just one-on-one, and every time they're like what we saw in the final section, in the final boss rush, where it's like they have way too much health. It just devolves into a war of attrition where you repeat the same cycle over and over again for 15 minutes and try not to mess up, and you inevitably mess up sometimes and die in one exchange, and you have to restart. That happened to me for an hour at the start of last stream. I just got bored and careless because there's nothing happening and I wanted to do something else. So those are lame. Notoriously, there was one where you were the dog man fighting the dark elf man, and you had to sit in shield for like half the fight, and then you could like hit him a couple of times, then you sat in shield, and then you sat in shield, and if you messed up one time, he'd shoot you and kill you. It was pain. It was torture. I actually grinded. The only time I grinded in this game was to get an item to make that boss easier, specifically. All the other bosses, though, I'd say are good. They are... I mean, they're not bad. They're good. I don't have any complaints about them. Some of them can be cheesed pretty easy. By shooting them with a gun. They don't have very complicated AI. So, like, you can kind of figure out what they're gonna do and sort of... I think I got a couple of enemies stuck one time. A couple bosses stuck in just a loop where I could just shoot them and win. So I'd say overall the bosses are... they're good. They're less of a test of skill, I'd say, and they end up... most of them become like a hey, did you stock up on health potions before you got here? Kind of thing. So I'd say overall, considering everything, the bosses are sort of average. They're okay. Progression. I really like how they did progression. They have this grid system where all the random junk items you collect in the game actually have a purpose, where you have to use specific items to fill in specific slots in groups of squares. And if you fill out an entire group of squares, then you unlock the thing, and you branch out to other groups that you can unlock. I think that was a pretty fun twist on the skill tree idea. And because multiple skill trees across your different party members shared the same items that you needed in order to fill out their grid. So you need to decide, okay, do I want to level up this guy first on this skill, or do I want to level up this other character first? Because I only have 2 of these. I only have 2 of these items, and there are 4 empty slots across my party. I think that was a really fun way to do progression. It's another layer of sort of strategy thinking, because you don't know when you're going to get those items again. They drop rarely, or maybe there's only a few of them. You know, I think that was a good system, good progression. I liked it a lot. And most of the things you unlocked felt like they were useful. You either unlocked an ability or a passive resistance. Although I think the resistances are too weak in this game. The resistances don't feel like they do much at all. Maybe they do, like, I don't know, 10%, 15% behind the scenes, but it's hard to notice. Equipment. I wrote equipment and items here for some reason, like they're different. Well, I guess they are different. Equipment. I never felt like I had to worry about equipment because I always had so much money. Like, after the second planet, I just had so much money just laying around. I didn't need to think about it. And I could buy whatever I wanted, really. Or I'd find a new tier of weapon in a chest somewhere, and I could save my money. Or I could alchemy 2 weapons together and make a better weapon. So you were always well stocked. Like, they always made sure that you had good equipment. As long as you were, you know, not spending your money like a lunatic. And, you know, you were looking out for chests sometimes. Items, though, they weren't stingy with items. I mean, that's the case with every RPG. You always have too many items. They did a good job, though, of making sure that, like, you didn't have too many. Like, you always had a healthy amount, but you didn't have, like, 1,000 potions or something stupid. And also, a lot of usable items are used to level up as well. So, that works into that. And menus are good. Nothing to report about menus. Is there anything else that I didn't write down? There's some side stuff that I didn't really interact with. There's like 2 main side game modes. One is the factory, and you get this in the 3rd planet. You can go into this factory mode where you have to set up this system of pipes and machines, and you have to make sure that everything is plugged in to, you know, like the right system, and you have to smelt things in the right order and make sure they all line up. It's like I don't know how to explain it. It's like a SimCity sort of interface where you place down pieces on a grid and you have to follow recipes and make a factory line and stuff like that. It's used to unlock new items in the shop, but you know, I didn't really need those. Again, you're very well equipped most of the time, just doing regular gameplay. I did it one time and I got a really useless badge that I didn't use the whole game. And the second thing is the monster fighting thing that seems arbitrary to, or that seems, what is the word? Obligatory, right? Yeah, it's obligatory. The obligatory monster fighting minigame. So you can place a trap and set it bait inside in the overworld, and then you can go off and do whatever. And then you check your menu and it says like, hey, there's an Insector in your bug trap. So you can go over, see the Insector Pokemon that you just caught, and you can feed it and train it. When you have a team of 5, you bring it to this special area on one of the planets. And it's like this sort of bizarro type chess battle where you have to destroy the enemy's king. And each bug type has a different ability. I tried it one time just to see what it was. I knew going in that I wasn't going to invest time into that because that's a lot. That's a lot of extra time. But it was cool. It looked cool. It looked like something you could totally actually get into. Seemed like something that could actually have like a competitive scene if somebody dedicated enough time to it. Because there seemed to be some depth there. But I just didn't interact with it. And also, third thing that I just thought of, there's an entire optional planet that I didn't touch. Because it was optional. And I had already put 30 hours into the game. And I wanted to finish it. So, overall, what would I say? What would I give this rank? What would I rank it in the Jag Cactus ranking? I'd say this game is good. If you're a fan of action RPGs, this is, I don't know, well, if you're a fan of action RPGs and you don't mind dungeon crawling, because this game kind of feels like a dungeon crawler sometimes, this game is good. It's definitely got, it's not a generic RPG. It's definitely got stuff going for it. It's got a cool progression system. I like the suggestion system. I didn't even mention that, the suggestion system. Anything that gives you control, anything that gives you even a little bit of control over what your AI party members do, I think is cool in my book. That should just be a thing in every RPG. But yeah, this is a good game. I'd say 6 out of 10. I think it's a 6 out of 10 for me. It's good. I wouldn't play it again. I'd say you have to be a very particular type of RPG enjoyer to like really like it a lot. But the combat at its core is really fun. The characters are great. Good experience. Good experience.